Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A fatal house fire on a First Nation in Northern Ontario has claimed the lives of 3 children. The children's grandmother, Lisa Meekus, tells APTN News the family is devastated. The eldest child was 9, his sister was 6, and younger brother was just 4 years old. The Anishinaabe Police Service Northwest Crime Unit is investigating the fire in Sandy Lake First Nation with the assistance from the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office and Ontario Provincial Police Identification Unit. A statement from Naskapi Nation says this tragedy comes as a tremendous shock, and words cannot express the grief that we share with the family and community. The OG Cree community is located about 600 kilometers northwest of Thunder Bay. You can find more on this story over on our website. There are new reports of a fuel smell in Iqaluit's drinking water. That's concerning for the city's 8,000 residents who are just coming out of a 2-month-long do not consume order. Residents began posting reports to social media yesterday, and today the city responded with a post of their own, saying they detected trace amounts of fuel this week, saying in part, quote, "The city continuously monitors water quality for petroleum hydrocarbons at the water treatment plant. There have been no measurements above the low alarm thresholds by the city's real-time monitoring station." The city is asking residents to remove aerators from their taps and run them on cold for a total of 20 minutes today. To report fuel odor concerns in Iqaluit, call the Water Quality Hotline at 867-979-5603. First Nations across Canada continue to struggle with the latest wave of COVID. Our Daryl Stranger has an update on the COVID situation in First Nation communities.
More than 50 First Nations in Manitoba have at least one active case of COVID-19, and more than 20 First Nations have at least 10 cases of COVID-19 out of 63 First Nations in the province. That's according to Dr. Marcia Anderson of the Manitoba First Nations Pandemic Response Coordination Team. As of January 13th, there are currently 3,252 active COVID cases among First Nations people in Manitoba, both on and off reserve.
We have significant amounts of COVID in the community right now. It is going to be endemic, which means we're going to have this virus circulating. But what we're focused on right now is still trying to support the healthcare system and protect the healthcare system so it's available to deliver the necessary healthcare to First Nations citizens. We want to have kids be able to return to school, and we want everybody to be able to access other social supports and services, but as safely as possible.
The latest update from Indigenous Services Canada has 61,532 total cases of COVID across the country since the pandemic began, 5,456 of which are active cases and 55,499 are recovered. British Columbia First Nations have seen a total of 6,871 cases. Meanwhile, Alberta has been the hardest hit province with 15,485 total cases. But Saskatchewan and Manitoba are rising quickly with a total of 14,102 and 14,266 cases, respectively. Rounding out the country's numbers among First Nations is Ontario with just under 6,000 total cases, Quebec with a little over 3,800 cases, and the Atlantic region with 975 cases. Patty Haidu, Minister of Indigenous Services, says variants are hitting communities hard.
Health systems and communities right across the country are strained, and more infections means more people in isolation, often significantly threatening essential activities and services. And that's why it's so essential that we continue to do everything we can in our power to lessen the impact of illness, and that we each do our part.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Naskapi Nation of Kawawa-Chikimak had a stressful holiday season. 33 COVID cases broke out in the community of 1,300 people. So their only grocery store had to figure out how to keep their people fed and help stop the spread. Here's a story by Amelia Fournier.
It gets chaotic, sometimes.
Before the holidays, Noah Swapi was looking forward to some rest and relaxation. Now, he's in charge of feeding his community. The Naskapi Nation of Kawawa-Chikamash is on the Quebec-Labrador border, accessible only by rail or plane. Their only grocery store recently closed its doors to the public due to a COVID-19 outbreak.
My employees, they've lived through this before at the store, and I've lived through it before as the chief of the community. So it was kind of not an easy way, but we kind of had an idea of how to go about things.
In order to keep the community fed, Swapi, his employees, and volunteers had to get creative. Swapi posted pictures of inventory to the Naskapi Radio Facebook page, and residents call in their grocery orders. People then transfer money to employees who use their own personal cards to pay for groceries.
Some community members don't have internet, so they call in by phone, and our volunteers go to pick up their debit card with their necessary information and their grocery list.
Customers can also add a tip to their orders to help buy bundles of food for the less fortunate.
We are adapting, and we're encouraging the community by social media to have patience with us and accept what's going on.
The Naskapi Nation of Kawawa-Chikamash has successfully kept COVID away until December 22nd, when the first cases of COVID broke out.
No matter how closely you watch on things, it's bound to happen sooner or later. There's always a door.
Chief Teresa Shamaganish says the Emergency Preparedness Committee acted fast and told everyone to stay home.
It was bad. It was hard for a lot of people because there were some people that didn't even see their families during the Christmas.
This is Kawawa-Chikimash's first full lockdown. The community now has 0 active cases. And while small gatherings between family are allowed, the outbreak isn't over yet.
So we're still working on trying to protect the community. It was really scary. Still it is, we still try to protect the people.
At least until it's safe to gather again, the Naskapi know they can count on their local grocer to make sure they stay fed. Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
COVID-19 and a severe cold snap. 2 factors that together are making daily life harder for the homeless of cities right across the country, including Montreal. Today, that city renewed its state of emergency, and it sounds like help may be on the way. Lindsay Richardson joins us from our Montreal studio with the latest. Lindsay, thanks for being with us. We understand there's been another death in the homeless community this week.
Yeah, Dennis, and this is believed to be the 3rd exposure-related death since early 2021. Now, you might remember at that time, Raphael Andre was the first death of 2021. His body was found in a portable toilet in the Milton Park neighborhood. And just a few weeks ago, Elisabeth Pugatu's body was found in a construction site near Cabot Square. Most recently this week, the body of a 74-year-old man known only as Michael was found in a tent where he was camped out under a major Montreal overpass. We don't have coroner's reports for any of these 3 deaths, but it's definitely reigniting conversations about the resources that are and aren't available in Montreal, pandemic or during the winter time.
Right across the country, we seem to be seeing issues with shelters. What's the shelter situation like there right now?
It's an interesting situation here in Montreal. The shelters seem to be caught between 2 realities. While there is shelter space available, there is also an active COVID-19 outbreak among the homeless population. According to public health statistics, there are about 250 cases at last count. So while the shelters are trying to respect hygiene measures and trying to respect population caps, they're also being urged by public health and Quebec government officials to actually accommodate more clients so that people are not stuck outside during the cold snap, which is only expected to get worse in the next week. We spoke to Projet Autochtone du Québec, one such organization, who confirmed that they've been accepting more clients than usual. But some good news in that area. As of next week, they'll have a bigger 24-hour shelter, which includes a warmed outdoor space where clients can consume. The need for these wet shelters has been expressed for years and extensively in our coverage of the homelessness issue here in Montreal, but it's not so easy to put permanent solutions in place. We spoke to their Director General, and this is what she had to say about how that plays out.
We were blocked for several months because of zoning issues, because there's no zone that really allows for a shelter without special permits, and those special permits can take months and months. It was only when the city of Montreal reinstated the state of emergency in November that they were able to actually requisition a hotel, meaning the city comes in and says, because of the state emergency, we're going to take your hotel and use it for homelessness services.
So, Lindsay, we know the state of emergency is unlocking crisis resources for urban Indigenous folks. How else are they pitching in?
Well, in the last week, right away, we've seen several hotels requisitioned and converted to temporary housing for the homeless, including 300 or more isolation beds put into place in a soccer stadium in Montreal's East End. But even putting these emergency resources in place opens up more short-term issues that need to be addressed. For example, the City of Montreal is putting out an extensive, widespread call for staff, for intervention workers, people to essentially help out in these emergency hot shelters. So they're hoping to bring on hundreds of people within the next couple of weeks to try to mitigate the potential damage of this situation.
Troubling stuff indeed. Lindsay, appreciate you taking some time for us here again today.
Thanks so much, Dennis.
Now to another ongoing crisis. A First Nation in the Yukon has declared a state of emergency after 3 community members died from drug-related deaths last week. The Carcross Tagish First Nation says it made the declaration in hopes it will help address the territory's ongoing drug crisis. The First Nation says the declaration was made to guarantee more funding and support from the territorial and federal governments, as well as raise awareness about addictions. Lindsay Amato, a Carcross Tagish citizen, says the deaths have greatly impacted citizens in the surrounding community of Carcross.
The thing about loss in the Yukon is that we lose one, the whole territory feels it. This place is so small. I grew up here my whole life. We lose one and everybody feels it. We're all here for each other, and it's been incredibly difficult. It's been incredibly difficult.
Amato is helping plan a territory-wide march tomorrow to draw attention to Yukon's addictions and mental health crisis. Time to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, why some are upset with a patch being worn by an RCMP officer in Nunavut. Stick around. Welcome back. The federal government and other community organizations have launched a new app. It's aimed at helping Canadians struggling with mental health and substance abuse. The app can be accessed from anywhere in the country, including remote First Nation communities. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
This is the new PocketWell app. With one click, you can gain access to a mental wellness or substance abuse assessment. It's a product of the Department of Mental Health and Addictions and Wellness Together Canada. The whole idea is to make mental health services more accessible, regardless of where you live. Mental Health Minister Carolyn Bennett also says those living in rural and remote communities may prefer the confidentiality the app offers.
There is an advantage to providing this care and support at a distance that differ with than the family doctor that's also their mother's, or the fact that if they go into the clinic, everybody in the waiting room knows they're there.
Back to Iqaluit now, where a controversial symbol has been showing up on RCMP uniforms, despite RCMP rules to prevent it from happening. The thin blue line flag has been spotted in Iqaluit, and our Kent Driscoll talks with an Inuit mother and politician who wants that patch gone.
It looks like community policing. RCMP officers out in public taking holiday photos. But this isn't a part of the RCMP uniform. That Canadian flag with the blue line has been banned from RCMP uniforms since 2020. It's known as the Thin Blue Line, or Blue Lives Matter patch. It's supposed to represent solidarity with police. Critics say it creates an us versus them situation between police and the policed. Regardless, it's not allowed on RCMP uniforms. We asked Nunavut RCMP's commanding officer, Chief Superintendent Amanda Jones, why this officer of hers was wearing a patch that had been specifically banned by RCMP brass. She refused an interview, but did have a staff member respond via email. She wrote, "The RCMP has established symbols that are already approved for use and are widely recognized and honored by our colleagues and the public. The thin blue line is not a symbol the RCMP endorses." Janet Brewster is an Iqaluit MLA. She also had a very scary experience with RCMP in Iqaluit. In September 2020, RCMP held her son at gunpoint. They were searching for an Inuk man with a rifle. Her son was going hunting and he's Inuk. He fit the description. Thing is, in Iqaluit, that's a very common description. We asked her about the blue line patch.
Bringing this issue forward, even as a news item, will encourage the RCMP and Nunavut to follow through on that ban and to ensure that their employees are not walking around town wearing a racist symbol. What is really well known as a racist symbol, adopted by Proud Boys. It's part of the white nationalist movement all over North America and probably the world.
As a regular member of the Nunavut Legislative Assembly, Brewster gets the chance to ask questions of the government, including the Justice Minister. She's hoping the blue line patches are gone before she has to bring it up at work.
Hopefully the issue will be resolved without having to bring it up to in a public forum such as the legislature, because as we know, the RCMP has banned the use of those patches, and it just makes sense for the RCMP to follow through and ensure that their members are not using those patches, especially while doing community policing or answering calls, especially distress calls, because it really could raise people's distress levels if they feel that they won't be treated with a mutual respect.
Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Thanks, Kent. A river trail in Winnipeg has been indigenized. Details coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. A red dress warming hut has been moved into place at the Forks in Winnipeg, called Rainbow Butterfly and created by the Manitoba Moon Voices. The hut represents the hundreds of Indigenous women, girls, and two spirits who have gone missing or been murdered across Canada. Thanks to Sandra Delaron for sharing this great shot. You can email your winter pictures to share@aptn.ca for a chance to be featured during our nightly newscast. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 7 with showers in St. John's, 12 below and snow in Halifax. Snow and minus 22 for Nain, 17 below and snow in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Sun's out in Montreal with a high of minus 17, 26 below for Chibougamau. Minus 15 with the sun out in Sault Ste. Marie, 21 below under the sun in North Bay. Minus 9 in Thunder Bay, minus 11 for Sioux Lookout. Minus 9 with snow in God's Lake, 1 below and snow in the Paw. Minus 6 for Winnipeg and Gimli, 5 below in Barons River. Minus 1 and sunny in Regina, plus 2 with snow for Saskatoon. Plus 3 in Meadow Lake, minus 5 in Uranium City. In northern Alberta, snow and plus 2 for Fort McMurray, plus 2 in Peace River. Plus 9 for Medicine Hat, 7 make that 8 in Lethbridge. 9 with showers in Vancouver, 8 with rain in Victoria. Plus 4 in Prince George, 5 above in Smithers. Minus 20 with snow in Old Crow, minus 5 in Whitehorse. 20 below and snow in Yellowknife, minus 24 in Norman Wells. 29 below for Sax Harbor, 33 below in Colville Lake. Minus 30 with snow for Baker Lake, 31 below in Cambridge Bay. Minus 29 in Resolute, 34 below in Arctic Bay. Well, people looking to see that warming hut featured in our photo of the day can now strap on their boots and lace up their skates to do just that, as Winnipeg's River Trail has officially opened at the Forks. But this year, the trail has been named after the river connection to Indigenous history. Michelle Carlinzig has more now on the new Nestawea Trail.
Most years, an ice trail opens up on the Red and Assiniboine rivers in Winnipeg. But this year, it has a new name. The Nestawea Trail. The name comes from a Cree word meaning 3 points, harkening back to the days when Cree, Ojibwe, and Dakota people met at the Forks long ago. Megan Sinclair is the Forks Indigenous curator.
So the Nestawea River Trail is one part of that history, and it's a reminder that this is not a place that's new. The Forks is not a new place. It's a place that is tens of thousands of years old, that people have been coming to here to enjoy each other's company, to learn, not always to get along, but to figure out a way to live together.
That's just one of the ways the Forks is honoring Indigenous culture. Rainbow Butterfly is a warming hut dedicated to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Created by a coalition of family members of MMIWG2S and Indigenous architects, the scales and colors on the exterior represent how a butterfly looks under a microscope. MMIWG2S family member Angela Lavalley was one of the people who came up with the idea.
So it reminded me of this beautiful Velcro existence of that we can't see, that it starts small, but it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you allow all these other different energies come into that, as well as honoring and centering, you know, Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited, their families and survivors.
Lavalley says it was a long 3 years of hard work to get the structure done, but it was symbolic of the MMIWG2S movement.
We tried to get her at the ledge. We tried the UW. We were at the Forks and then bounced back. So it just didn't happen like that. But to feel her and see her actually there is kind of like, it's always remembering the good way to do it and why we did it. So laying down that cedar and tobacco and keeping those ceremonial rituals at the forefront was, you know, key and essential.
A QR code posted on the hut lands on the MMIW G2S Calls to Justice page. Métis architect Rochelle Lemieux says she hopes it sparks conversation.
The overall space is getting used and is in a location that is quite noticeable. So it's great that it's going to have kind of a ripple effect. I think that hopefully people will be there to be able to commemorate people that have passed away or passed on, but also have the younger generation understand that this is a conversation that needs to be talked about.
People can skate the trails as long as the conditions are safe and learn as they glide along. Michelle Karlenzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And our thanks to Michelle for that. It's looking like a great weekend to hit the Nestawaya Trail. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.